Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Janita Robinson. I'm Director of the Mission Sustainability Initiative at Forefront. I'm really happy to have you all with us today for thinking about collaboration, a conversation about fiscal sponsorships and back office services. So we have a great panel of folks joining us today. I'm going to just do some quick introductions, but they'll do some longer self-introductions in a minute. We have with us Dee Cadet, who's an organizer with Justice Cream, who uses she, her, and I also use she, her. We have Jill O'Donovan, Chief Innovation Officer with the Ywca of Metropolitan Chicago. Khalid Nkazi, who's the Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of National Able Network. Dee, Jill, myself, and Khalid will be your main panelists for today. We are also joined by Bridget Altenberg, who is the President and CEO of National Able, and also Lois Wilkins, who's the Director of the Empowerment Collaborative at the Ywca. Lois and Bridget won't be answering the main questions, but will be participating and helping answer any audience questions when need be. So why are we here today? So thinking about collaboration. Hopefully we'll come away from today with everyone having a little bit of a better understanding about fiscal sponsorships and back office services. But an understanding really in the context though of focused on mission and impact for the people that you're serving, and thinking about how these things might help you to align with your services and your values. The MSI is focused on creating a learning community and providing resources on long-term or permanent partnerships. And we really want to help create a community of folks to talk about these options, and so that you don't feel so alone in thinking about what the possibilities are. With that, just brief introduction and context, I'd like to have our main panelists do some introductions, and we're going to go. We'll go in alphabetical order. We'll be traditional. So we'll go first Dee, and then Joe, and then Khalid.
Hello, thank you very much for the introduction, Janita. My name is Dee Cadet. I use she, her pronouns. I am an organizer. I joined the core team with Justice Cream. We are a woman of color-led vegan mutual aid ice cream shop based here in Chicago. So we not only make vegan ice cream, but we donate 100% of our profits back to grassroots social movements in Chicago. Our work is about building a solidarity economy, which means that creating and practicing anti-capitalist systems and creating a vision and a future that cares for all of us. And we do that through ice cream.
I'm Jill O'Donovan. I'm Chief Innovation Officer at the Ywca Metropolitan Chicago. I've been in this role I've been with the Ywca Metropolitan Chicago for 5 years now. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Ywca, we are on a mission to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. We are not part of the YMCA, even though our CEO, Dory McCorder, recently left us to go be the CEO of the YMCA Metropolitan Chicago. But during her time at Ywca, she was really on a mission to transform us from a 140-year-old social service agency to more of a social enterprise. And what that looks like is really focusing on the value creation and what value we're bringing to the community and to our constituents, and what is the total value to the marketplace in general, and who sees benefit in that value. So that's what I was brought on as part of my role as Chief Innovation Officer, is to look for ways that we can maximize that value to create more social impact, but then also to generate revenue to sustain the organization. So I've been doing this work for the last couple of years, and part of that was establishing the Empowerment Collaborative that we'll be talking about today.
Good afternoon. This is Khalid Qazi. I've been working for National Able Network for last 17 years. As you know, the National Able Network is a workforce agency for 80% or plus funded by government agencies and what have you, kind of thing. So we have been providing the back office services and help to some of the smaller non-for-profits since 2012. So we go with more of the contractual based relationship with the companies. We do the accounting pretty much and IT services, HR services, as well as some marketing help as well. But the main focus chiefly on IT areas, as well as the accounting as well. Currently, we have 11 IT clients. Those we provide from the Office 365 setup and all the technology relates to run day-to-day operations, as well as the financial services from A to Z in accounting. We also help them, our clients, to do the auditing as well. So when it comes for the accounting and fiscal support and back office, we do provide services from, you can just name it, and then we will be able to provide in that area as well. And also, since we have expertise and the knowledge in the government-based accounting as well, so we do can work with some of the agencies, those have more technical accounting needs, as well as for the A133 help and what kind of thing. So this is what we do provide in a nutshell. But as we go, we can provide you the more information as well.
Thanks. I appreciate those introductions. I want to delve a bit more into some of the details and hope to provide some clarifications. You threw out like I think like the A13, which I assume is like an accounting term, and we may come back to that. Okay. But we're going to get into a level of details, but maybe not that level of detail. So we'll see. I actually, Didi, I wanted to come back and start with you because Justice Cream, which started up recently, you know, you were initially looking for a fiscal sponsor, but then you ended up getting your own 501c3 status. And I hope you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So, oops, sorry, I'm getting feedback. Is that okay? Can you all hear?
We can hear you okay.
Okay. So Justice Cream was actually conceived back in 2017, you know, in response to the 2016 election, which many, you know, racial justice movements have come out, racial justice projects have come out in response to. And by our co-founder, Hailey, who also had a background in ice cream making. She had been making ice cream, I think, as a teenager working in an ice cream shop. So was also, at the time, studying abolition at Ywca through a PhD program. And over the course of those 3 years, worked a lot with mentors in the community and at Ywca, really about how can we connect the praxis of you know, racial justice, economic justice, and connect it to and incorporate it into this justice ice cream project that she had on the side. And so we actually got recommendation to become a 501c3 from a mentor through a fellowship that both Hailey and I did called New Leaders Council. And then the aspect was because Justice Cream is not about making ice cream. Justice Cream is also about providing liberatory education. We're also more interested in supporting others in creating other practices of solidarity economy, not just ice cream, but supporting our community partners. You know, we're having conversations with other community partners about how can we connect some of the work that they're doing and make that a solidarity economy practice, just like how we're doing at Justice Cream. So we have this aspect of sales within our ice cream products, which currently we have, I think, 8 different flavors that are connected to 8 different local grassroots projects, including Chicago Shy Torture Justice Center, Organized Communities for Deportation, and connecting that and selling those ice creams at pop-ups, and we sell them online and we're hopefully we'll get a website and we'll be able to do deliveries, but also we have a team that's putting together teach-ins online about solidarity economy, about abolition. And so that kind of shifted us to thinking about becoming a 501c3. Someone had mentioned the Girl Scout model. They're selling cookies, but also there's a huge movement of Girl Scouts connected to it. And we were looking around doing a fiscal sponsorship. But I think with us, our mission is very unique, right? And to be able to have even something as far as fiscal policies reflect our particular mission and values that are anti-capitalist, that are, focus on racial justice, having our own 501c3 status also felt like it came with a lot of benefits. But it was hard because we started a pandemic. So the IRS was very slow. It took over a year to get that status. And, we thought fiscal sponsorship might provide us that intermediate possibility of getting grant funding, of being able to provide, those donation letters, because we were not able to do that as we were raising funds on our GoFundMe. We couldn't, we raised $25,000 that first year, and we couldn't provide donors with that tax letter, which was really hard at that time. So yeah, we're definitely looking at a lot of options, but for the long-term value of having control over our policies, and as well as, once we got the IRS, a year later, we decided to move forward with that. But we did a lot of research and made a lot of connections with fiscal sponsors as well, including, Peace Development Fund, Allied Media as well, that I can talk a little bit more about. They were very mission aligned, but I think in the end, with our goals that we were headed, the 501c3 made the most sense for us.
It's really helpful, Didi. And I think I want to come back to you to talk about some of those organizations that you did find that were mission aligned, and also maybe even talk about, I know through your work with Monarch Butterflies, which does use this fiscal sponsorship to sort of understand the decision making behind that. But I want to turn to Jill for a second, because Jill, Didi talked about, their values and finding somebody who is aligned with their values. And I'm curious as to how that fits into what the YWCA is doing. Before I turn it over to you, though, I want to just note for the audience, so Didi mentioned one of the main components of a fiscal sponsorship is it often then lends to the organization, which may not itself be a 501c3, the 501c3 status to a startup or a smaller organization that then allows donations to be tax deductible, right? And so that's often one of the primary benefits of fiscal sponsorship. But Jill, to this question of values alignment, is that a big part in terms of like which organizations the Y works with through the Empowerment Collective?
Yes, absolutely. And we're looking for mission-aligned organizations. The goal of the Empowerment Collaborative that we established. So I'll take a step back. The Empowerment Collaborative is an initiative that we started at the YWCA, where we provide essentially consultancy services for mission-aligned organizations. And the goal is for us to maximize our impact in the areas that fit under our mission. And one of the ways we see to do that is to help like-minded organizations with their impact, their infrastructure, their innovation, to really be able to support and advance the way we want to see the world, the end result we want to see in the world. to provide economies of scale, to connect them with different resources. And some of those resources could be, through fundraising, and we do provide some fiscal sponsorship from a financial standpoint, the tax, so that folks can raise money and it's tax deductible. But we also support those organizations through, really helping them think through what it is that they want to accomplish at the end of the day. Does that require they be a 501c3? Would that be better served through a partnership with another organization? Would that be better served through becoming a program of the YWCA? Or perhaps even, a full, if it is an already existing organization, a merger or an acquisition. But ways that we can empower through a collaborative, collective participation with mission-aligned organizations.
So you mentioned economies of scale. Is purchasing a big part of what you do as part of the Empowerment Collective?
We haven't yet with any of our members, but that is something that we're looking at, to be able to provide them with different supports that we can, or different benefits that we can get because we're a larger organization, whether it is, I'm trying to think, about purchasing, things like that. One of the things that we are working on currently is we just launched a 401k for our employees. And there is a component of that that will allow us to extend that 401k to organizations or entities that we're associated with. So we're working that into our Empowerment Collaborative model now. So more to come on that.
That's a big benefit.
That's one of the things we're looking at.
Colin, I'm sorry, did you want to jump in on something that Jill said, or?
No, I think probably, we have the same model, but normally our approach for the smaller agencies or non-for-profits. So we pretty much, let me get back to one more thing, what I did not mention earlier, that we do provide the fiscal services of fiscal sponsorship as well for the companies those are seeking for the non-for-profit status. And while they would have, or they already applied for it, but they cannot accept the donations because they are not the 501c3. So we do provide those services as well. But and the same thing with agencies, those are already have the 501c3 status, then we provide other services like accounting and IT and all that stuff. But when it comes to for the mission and impact for an agencies, that's the definitely means we are a value add for those companies. One of the main reasons that not everybody could afford a controller or CFO with like a solid accounting background, and may not be able to pay that cost. So we are for them that senior position where we can present the financials to their board and they're like prepare the budgets for them, where internally, if they go and hire a person on that knowledge base and could cost a decent amount. And we're not very cheap, but it's still not that high either. So it's very affordable for the companies to come to us. And we definitely, there's a lot of impact because if they are saving the cost in admin side, because one of the things for non-for-profits means when they apply for foundation donation and corporations, even for the government agencies, they give you only a certain portion what they could spend on the admin side. I mean, some of it's only 10% up to that. I mean, it's like they would like to agency to spend more money into the mission-oriented, more programmatic thing, not in admin or what have you. I mean, it's using a third party doing for accounting for them at the much cheaper than having their own accountant save the bucket, and they are able to manage that way, use it, it's like, so they normally don't go very high in admin side, but there's definitely a decent impact for especially for the smaller companies that, and as I said, they may not be able to afford a person with that caliber in their own staff.
So that's helpful. that seems like it is a big value add, right, for smaller organizations that can't afford a controller or CFO to be able to use your services. Is it similar then with IT? Are you all then sort of like the chief technology officer or chief information officer then for these organizations? Do you provide them with software, hardware? Like what are the extent of the IT services that you're providing?
So the IT, pretty much the same thing. We have our CIO already as well experienced and what have you. So the technology, when it comes to the IT area as well, we are very reasonably rated for IT, if meant like, and then also we provide like all the 365 setup, and then buy the equipments, laptops and desktop for them, and screen those laptops, and then set it up in their environment and all that stuff. So pretty much the same area we're focusing for IT as well. You know, means like if you need the technical service, where if you go and hire a CIO, it could be very expensive, but our hourly rate and the services we do provide, probably you should be able to afford the IT areas as well. And if we have a client only 2 hours a month need as well, where some of the clients do need from like a 35 to 50 hours on a monthly as well. So it depends that what do you need and size of your organization, but we do provide the IT services where definitely making a decent impact where you may not be able to afford an IT department of your own.
Jill and Khaled, I'd love you to talk a little bit more about pricing, because Khaled, you just talked about sort of an hourly rate. Jill, yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about pricing. And I don't know, we can maybe start with you, Jill. Is it like a retainer, like a monthly retainer that you charge organizations? Is it a percentage of budget? How do you decide what to charge for these services?
Who needs to decide anything? You know, we formally launched the Empowerment Collaborative in July of last year, in 2020. So we have about 17 organizations and individuals that we've worked with over that time. And really each one there hasn't really been a formalized structure yet that we've landed on for all of the different areas that we're providing services. But generally, we have a membership that is based off of revenue, the size of the organization. A lot of the organizations that we worked with in the very beginning had zero revenue, so that made our pricing model a little challenging. So with them, we've worked in different ways. You know, it could be through the additional fundraising, an administrative fee for the fundraising that we do on their behalf with them jointly, or it could be on a consultancy basis, an hourly basis. For others, it's a TBD. You know, once we help them get to a stage where they are generating revenue, then you know we can talk more about how we are compensated for that. But for the main members, the sort of folks that are established and you know are really looking for that collaborative support, you know, it is a membership-based model based on revenue. We've done one assignment where it was on an hourly basis because it was more office support coming in and really helping them get a hold of what was going on in their front office from an administrative standpoint, and you know help them get organized. Lois did a fantastic job of keeping them on track. So that was more of an hourly arrangement. But we're very flexible, and as we grow, and we'll definitely be formalizing. But at this point, it's very fluid.
Khaled?
So yes, we've been doing this for close to 9-10 years at this point. So we do have a setup fees normally. Means for the IT, normally IT is hourly because it's means we don't want to do a fixed cost because agency may not be able to afford that rate and what have you thing. So normal $110 per hour for the IT support in terms of the regular services. And as I said, it's like, you know, implementing the IT tools and it's like your regular maintenance or running of your IT department. But that is $110 per hour, where we provide. That is a blended rate. It could be time from our CIO and could be from the lower staff and what have you, kind of thing. But we don't fluctuate the rates, and then what we have experienced based on the market, it is very reasonable rate and what have kind of thing. So, but that's $110 for the IT side, what we charge, and most of our clients are hourly there, because that's we are able to charge them. If somebody uses us only for 2-3 hours, so then we are only charging 2-3 hours worth of the time. But there's the upfront cost for the setting up the environment. There's a fixed cost what we charge based on the size of the agency, but there's no dollar amount attached to that amount. But it depends on the company's size and what their need, because sometimes agencies say, well, we are transferring this environment to that environment. You have to set it up that way, So that setup fee upfront, it's a different rate or fixed amount. We say, well, we will charge you for the first 45 to 60 days, that amount. But after that, it's pretty much all hourly. When it comes to finance, it's a little bit different. It's any agency under $500,000, normally from $1,650 to $2,000 a month, fixed amount. There's a lot of things, because if you're doing the bookkeeping, it may require maybe 10 to 15 to 20 hours a month to do the smaller companies to do the bookkeeping correctly. So that is a fixed amount for those agencies. But anything over a little bit more complicated is $165 per hour, but it depends on the size of the agency as well. But most of the cases, we do provide the full services, and we also help them only the area. If they just need the higher end expertise, we do provide those services as well. But that's $165. If they use for 5 hours, we will only charge them for 5 hours. If they need help in the more, for more, it depends what kind of engagement is that. That's normally dictates the rate as well. Rate is fixed pretty much for size. It's just how many hours we can project for that company or that engagement.
Thanks, Jill and Khaled. I appreciate your transparency on some of those fees. Didi, when Justice Cream was looking at fiscal sponsors, I assume that you saw like a range of fees, and that was part of your consideration as well. Can you talk a little more about like that search? And also you mentioned a couple organizations that you felt were values aligned, and what else you thought was appealing about them.
Yeah, so we did look into a few, and I actually ended up recommending some to other folks who were, starting off organizations and we're currently fundraising. So Peace Development Fund is one of them. And I think for us, we were looking at other, organizations that were similar to us, and if they were fiscally sponsored, who they were fiscally sponsored by. And so that's how Peace Development Fund came up. Allied Media is also based out of Detroit. Both of them, one of them offers mostly like the grant relationship, and I'm not very familiar with the A, B, or C fiscal sponsorship, but I know one is they have like the grantor relationship where if you are, applying for a grant, they mostly take it in and then they'll disperse that money out to you. Both of those offered that. I think something for Justice Cream, we hadn't really been applying for grants quite yet. We really wanted to start. But I think we were actually very interested in back office services. We had a lot to think about in terms of, figuring out the flavors, figuring out partnerships, figuring out fundraising, navigating taxes and accounting was just something that, we're like, we don't have time for. It's really hard to find another volunteer because we're all volunteer based who might have that skill set. And so when we did end up getting the 501c3 status, what we did end up doing is getting we had recommendation by an accountant who offered small business services. So we have somebody who works, who files all of our paperwork for taxes, who also does monthly reports for us and then just sends it to us and goes over. It's kind of like we'll call it, we have like about 2 hours every month. We can spend 30 minutes with him and he can go over it with us. Maybe I think it's quarterly. So that's something that we did end up doing because we're like, this is a long curve. So I do like highly recommend like the back office services too, if that's something. Because sometimes also when we did the Peace Development Fund, they could provide the number, the 501c3 number, and they could help with the fund distribution. But we also wanted that extra piece of, okay, but we're still starting off. It would be really nice to kind of have someone help with the accounting. And we don't, filing our, we were very scared with all these pieces. So that additional support too, and looking for fiscal sponsors, if you can get, either of them or maybe 2 different things in 2 different spaces could also be helpful too.
So Didi, you alluded to various models of fiscal sponsorship, and I'm just going to post in the chat a chart that outlines 6 different models that a lawyer developed, I don't know how many years ago, and he's got a blog on fiscal sponsorship. So if you want to go deep into fiscal sponsorships, that website is the way to go, fiscalsponsorships.com. But it talks through the 6 different models. And I think you referred to a couple of them. I wanted to ask you too, though, about Radical Monarchs, which I think, right, is your day job, right? And which is operating under fiscal sponsorship, and was hoping that you could talk a little bit about the model that is set up with its fiscal sponsorship. Well, I think you may have frozen, Didi. Well, so I don't know if you heard that, Didi. We saw you as frozen. I did post in the chat the link to the 6 models that you referenced. And then I was saying, your day job with Radical Monarchs is under a fiscal sponsorship. And I wondered if you could talk about that relationship, who the sponsoring organization is, like what services you use them for, and why that is a good fit.
Yes, thank you. I apologize. So yes, I am also currently the Development and Operations Coordinator at Radical Monarchs, which is a national organization and has had a fiscal sponsorship, I believe, for the last 7 to 8 years, and is, looking to move towards its own 501c3. Our current fiscal sponsor is Community Initiatives, which has about, I think something like 400 projects. And I think a lot of that decision to have a fiscal sponsorship in the beginning is to focus on the project, right? And put all of the resources onto the project and, have a fiscal sponsor in both. They had another one previously, but in both of these cases was able to, collect donations. They also provided a fundraising platform as well. So you didn't have to go extra.
I think Didi froze again. She was talking about her fundraising platform. We will come back to her while she is reconnecting. Khaled and Jill, I wanted to ask you, how do you measure success with these partnerships, whether it's the fiscal sponsorship or the providing of IT or financial services? How do you know that it's working? Oh, Didi, you're back. Yeah. Are you back or maybe not back? No. Go on.
I can speak to that. I think success for us is if we can see their impact and ultimately what they were intending to achieve be accomplished. One of the examples of that is we were contacted by a company that was collecting donations for hospitality workers at the beginning of the pandemic. He was collecting it through his private company, doing fundraisers. I think he was selling a shirt and some products, and the proceeds would go to his restaurant clients' employees. And we were the fiscal sponsor for that project. When he got to the point where he had distributed all the money that he had raised, we assumed that as a program and brought it in-house to the YWCA. So we transformed it a bit and continued the fundraising to support Chicago hospitality workers. And so we created a program where folks would come on and apply to be members of the Chicago Hospitality United program. And we would do cash assistance awards and then connect them with resources, either career resources, childcare resources, or counseling services. And so, to us, that's been very successful. His goal was to support the hospitality industry, and we were able to take that beyond just financial support to more social supports. And we've had some great success stories from that. One of the workers that we supported ended up starting his own catering company, and we were able to then also partner with him as we were doing food distribution. One of our funders who was supporting our food distribution program through the pandemic would purchase the food from that particular individual. So it was kind of this nice holistic I'm losing my words, but bringing it all around back to the beginning for the main goal of supporting the hospitality workers who've been impacted by the pandemic. So to us, that's
but the visual helped, Jill.
Yes.
Khaled, how do you all measure success with your partnerships?
So we a little bit different for the IT, definitely. As long as your equipment is working and you have connectivity in your computers, definitely that's the one area. But then we do seek the feedback, talking to the senior management, and want to make sure that it's like they know what the services we are providing. And get the feedback as well, because IT is very crucial for any company, and we would know very quickly if IT is not working. If somebody had the issues with the laptops or desktop and what have you, definitely it would affect the work, and then you would need somebody to fix it as soon as possible. So that's the one of the areas for IT where we get the feedback from our clients that how we are servicing providing. Financials are different. Definitely, we do deal with their management on day-to-day basis. The smaller companies, the medium-sized company as well. But our main gauging point is their audits. Because if I providing an accounting services to a company and that company is at 300,000 plus, then they would have to file, if in Chicago, Illinois, you have to go and file Attorney General report for any organization if you're 300 and over. Then you need a audit help, as well as you have to file 990 to IRS, regardless of the dollar amount. So if the smaller company, we do help you agencies filing the 990 to the IRS. But if the bigger company, it's anything over 300 plus, then you would have to have an audit performed by an external auditors, independent auditor. We help them, and if the audit is clean, that is where you think that probably what services we are providing and is working out. Because there's a third party would review the work, what you have done for a company, and definitely these are independent. They are not the part of National Labor Network, and so it is a third eye would be provided for the financial services. And then if the cleaned audit definitely would be a testament for our services. And then definitely we're providing something good for that company.
Yeah, Khaled, on the finances too, I would assume like a measure of success is also sort of like the absence of negative action. So an issue that I've seen come up a couple times around some funding issues is discovering that some nonprofits have had their status revoked from the IRS, right, because it's now the case that if you don't file your 990s for 3 years, right, it is automatically revoked. And I've actually been in the position of having to tell a nonprofit, FYI, you've been revoked, because they did not seem to realize it, because there's also been changes around who has to file a 990s. The threshold has been lowered. Dee Dee, welcome back. I think when you cut out, you were about to talk about a fundraising platform that I think, is that something that Radical Monarch has access through its fiscal sponsorship? Go ahead.
Yes, sorry, my internet just decided to go out completely today. But yeah, so with our current fiscal sponsor, we are able to utilize their fundraising platform that they kind of like how Jill was talking about with the 401k, buying the 401k and, or not buy, but having a program and then allowing the projects that you have access to that. Same thing with our current fiscal sponsor. They have, you know, bought this fundraising platform and we're able to buy into it as well. And same thing as healthcare as well. You know, healthcare is definitely something where larger companies have access to better plans. And for us, we only have 5 staff members. Small business healthcare is no joke. It's definitely hard to get great plans for employees. And so that was also a really big benefit. I think part of our reason is of moving into eventually a 501c3 status for ourselves is, you know, the amount that we spend per month, right? And our own policies that we do a lot of reimbursements. We only have 1 credit card. So that stuff necessarily isn't quite working with how our organization is growing and building. But it has been incredibly helpful for the last, you know, 8 years that Radical Monarchs has been around and has able to, you know, allow us to not, you know, think about those particular parts. But even as we move into 501c3, we are considering still a back office support because it's still not, even though we might not be fiscally sponsored anymore, we still are very small. So as Khaled was saying, hiring, you know, finance director, controller is just still not something that we can do. So that's just still something that we're looking into as well.
It's really helpful to share. I want to share some of my own personal experience, and then I have maybe 1 or 2 more questions for the panelists. And then I want to make sure we save time for audience questions. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. So several years ago, I ran a smaller nonprofit called Lawyers Lend a Hand to Youth. And it originally started as like a joint program of the Chicago Bar Association and the Chicago Bar Foundation. And I think when I came on board, I was the first full-time executive director. But my office was within the Chicago Bar Association. Within that building was also the Chicago Bar Foundation. And then there was another smaller organization that had just started up about, I think, 2010 called the Institute for Inclusion in the Legal Profession. So Institute for Inclusion in the Legal Profession, Lend a Hand, and the CBA, we all shared space. The Institute and Lend a Hand, we ended up sharing a staff person because they had an executive director. I was the executive director of Lend a Hand. We wanted to hire like a program assistant, and we went through the University of Chicago Fellows program, which was somebody like right out of college. Princeton has a similar program. I think a lot of schools do now. And we split the person's time and we split the person's salary. And that enabled us to have support, but not take on like the full cost of a person. And this is all interconnected. Technically, I was employed by the Bar Association, and Lend a Hand, my organization, leased me back. And a big part of that was something that Dee Dee had hit upon, health insurance, because health insurance for 1 and 1.5 is oftentimes cost prohibitive. And so the Bar Association wasn't large. I mean, it was maybe about 50 to 60 people at most, but having that shared, being able to tap into those benefits, that 403B program made a huge difference, I would say. I want to ask a little bit about kind of stakeholder perceptions or concerns around these partnerships. And I mean stakeholders pretty broadly. I'm curious, it's about funders, I'm curious as to about ultimate client served. I'm curious as to board members. Khaled, in particular, you mentioned on the financial side that you all will prepare the financial reports to present to board members. What's been sort of the feedback or the response around that?
For the feedback and response for the up to this point, they have liked it, because when they engage a fiscal contractual like national level network, definitely they need a buy-in from the board as well. It depends on the size of the company, because one of the company we have in Kentucky, they are workforce agency for the whole state. And so they have the LEOs, which is like local board members, including some of the judges, mayors of the counties and what have you. So the first time when we applied for it a couple years back, there was with the proposal, it went through the scrutiny, and because we are Chicago-based agency, Illinois-based company, and then we applied for fiscal services in Kentucky, and then so we've been selected and been working with them for the last 4 years. So means when it comes to the fiscal services, normally it starts from the board, because they can't have, if doing the accounting services, the person where it's not approved from their board. And up to this point, we have very positive feedback. That was the reason some of the clients we have been working is 5 to 6 years been providing the same services, and as I said, it's in the fiscal side, if you, especially if the bigger agencies, if you don't provide the services correctly, and if there's would be a finding in audit books, or maybe some issues with the funders and donors and what have you kind of thing, it means there will be a problem. You don't need that person to be your fiscal agent or your contractual for next fiscal year as well. So especially for the finance side, it's very critical to have the relationship or kind of buy in or getting the feedback from the both sides, because most of the companies, I do present the financials, either if they have the quarterly meetings, then I present in the quarterly meetings. If they have every other month, then I do present to the board as well. But so not only the preparation is the presentation as well, because some of the boards, they do have the people with very good knowledge about the finances. They are CPAs, they are like bankers and all that stuff. You need somebody to talk their language and present the financials where they could understand your language, as well as the right terminology to be used. So that's what the means, like when it comes to the board and what have you. Our fiscal services that do get the feedback, not only for the management, from the board as well, because we are providing the presentation to the board, either quarterly or semi-quarterly, or maybe once a year kind of thing. So yeah.
You hit on a couple of things that I think are worth elevating. One, you're providing service to this organization in Kentucky, right? I think that's a lesson for all of us during now this virtual world, but that you can look locally for this, but you can also look nationally for this, right? And Dee Dee, you also mentioned, right, Radical Monarchs, which is national, and then community initiatives, the fiscal sponsors, national. But the other thing, Helen, when you talked about the boards and how the boards have to sign on even before you provide these services, I think is really important, because one of the lessons that we often impart through the Mission Sustainability Initiative is that if you don't make your board sure that your board is a champion for these potential partnerships, there are going to be obstacles, because they're going to ask a lot of questions about what it is that you're doing and maybe prevent it from happening. So it's really important to get your board engaged early on, if you have a board, in thinking about what these partnerships look like. But Jill, the question to you about stakeholders and stakeholder perceptions.
I think the biggest challenge we've seen so far is from at least one of our fiscal sponsorees is how they explain the relationship to the donors, to make sure that we're all aligned on how this is communicated, that these are tax deductible donations to the YWCA with the intention of serving the program that they have put forward. But if it is determined that that program is not, if the funds aren't being used for that particular reason, or that we still have the right and the obligation to the donor to not transfer those funds. So make sure that everybody understands how that relationship works. It's not, it's not just a pass through with no questions asked. We have an obligation to make sure that if it's going to be a tax deductible donation through the YWCA, that it is, essentially a blessed program of the YWCA, or being used for what is mission aligned and what we had agreed upon. So that's definitely a challenge. Not an insurmountable challenge. It's just being able to come up with the right wording, because not everybody knows what a fiscal sponsor is. And you want to make sure that when the donor gets a letter from the YWCA saying thank you for your donation to the YWCA, they appreciate that that's where they were donating to in the first instance, and making sure that that is spelled out for them. But by and large, I think the stakeholders have been very supportive. Definitely the folks that we've worked with and we've been able to connect Empowerment Collaborative members with as sort of back office supports, our different partners and supporters in the business world, from tax and accountancies and different vendors that we've connected Empowerment Collaborative members with. Everybody's been very, very willing to, assist the organizations, sometimes for free, just on a consultancy basis, and then to provide more substantive services at a discounted cost because of their partnership with the YWCA.
So as I said, we welcome questions in the chat. Just a couple more questions from me. I would love to hear a little bit more about some examples of things that have worked out well. And in particular, Khalid, I think when we had talked previously, it was mentioned some work that National Able was able to do. Was it with the Allied Arab flights? And if you tell us sort of what support you provided, what was able to happen?
All right, so the Allied Airlift is we still working. That's only 3 to 4 weeks old client. We've been working and we're helping them the evacuation from Afghanistan. There's people working. The main goal is to help that agency who's not 501c3 yet. They need to make sure that financially we do receive the funds from the donors. And as Jill said, probably want to make sure that it's transparent. They're giving to National Labor Network, and we are passing on to the Allied Airlift based on where we see and do the due diligence, and then assessing the receipts and all that stuff. So because they are our stake with them, and they are giving money to National Labor Network, if anything goes wrong, they will be after us, not to the for a company who does not have the 501c3. But that Allied Airlift is just the new thing, just to help the people coming from the Americans, those who stuck in Afghanistan and want to come back. So there's a private jet that would go and pull them after the confirmation from the government agencies and what have you. So that's where we're kind of helping them there as well. And this is just a very recent client, and we just started working with them for last 3 to 4 weeks. But the bigger clients, and I think one of the things we mentioned about one of the homeless agency in 2012, where we helped them in terms of they have the serious cash flow issues. And one of the things happened there, the CFO kept the checks worth of $450,000 in drawer and never mailed it. And they used that funding to pay for the staffing. They were overstaffed and what have you kind of thing. So there was the two challenges we had to work with them. So one thing to help them just to generate their reputation with government agencies and what have you, and fix their accounting as well. And helping them at that time. That agency is successfully running at this point. We are not providing the fiscal agency services anymore, but after 4 or 5 years, they got to their own staff and been running. So that is a success point for us, that you can see that in 2012, it's pretty much close to 9 years, where we helped the agency in the financial needs, and they're still running, So that's one of the success factor for us to say, well, okay, we are proud that we helped that agency who's still running and provided the same services.
Two great examples, one with the airlift of like very quickly being able to step in and provide that nimbleness to help get people out to safety, but also a long-term partnership with the homeless organization that then decided to go off on its own. Jill, anything you want to share in terms of the success story?
So we're working with a group, a for-profit company that provides college athletic eligibility counseling services, and was very interested in providing those services to folks that couldn't otherwise afford to pay for them. So we are helping them with a fundraising effort in that regard, but we're able to then also connect them with one of our Empowerment Collaborative members who is focused on educating boys of color. And we've been providing more consultancy services for that Empowerment Collaborative member, helping them with their marketing, helping them with their curriculum development and the like. So we were able to connect both of those organizations together. And from what I understand, that has done very well. They've taken off, and they're now thinking of ways that they can collaborate to expand both of their impacts in the different areas that they've been formed to serve. Very exciting.
And Dee Dee, how is it going for Justice Cream? Now you've got your 501c3, you're operating independently, and maybe the most important question, where can people find ice cream?
Yes, I will drop that in the chat, actually. But yeah, so we received 501c3 status right before the summertime, and that's when we started doing a few pop-ups. We're currently looking for our own space. And so there is a lot of questions around, partnership and alignment. We're thinking a lot about the type of neighborhood we're trying to be in, especially, taking into account gentrification and all these, different aspects. And so we're hoping to also start fundraising again. We are fundraising, I guess, early last year, and hoping to fundraise to get rental and some more equipment. We have a current partnership with another ice cream spot in Logan Square that allows us to go in when we need to make our ice cream, because those machines are very expensive. And so, we're mostly focusing on building up our team right now. We've brought on some new core members, as well as developing the liberatory education side of our organization. So, we're really finalizing the ice cream flavors, but moving into the more educational piece that is really close to our mission. So it is moving, definitely, I think definitely looking for more ways to get our ice cream out there and to become, the organization that we want. So slow and steady. So I will definitely put it into the chat once we start releasing them again.
And what I appreciate about what you just shared is, so you got your 501c3, you're doing your work, but you're also still thinking about other ways to partner, right? Whether it's with the other shop in Logan Square or on some of the educational work that you'll be doing with like-minded organizations, because it's not, because partnership decisions, I'll be on my soapbox, right? It doesn't have to be like a one-time decision, right? We went this route, and so we're going it alone forevermore. No, we can get our 501c3, but we can do something else in terms of space or in terms of employees. A question was put into the chat asking if Forefront offers fiscal sponsorships to startup organizations. So Forefront does offer some fiscal sponsorships. The best way is to contact our Chief Financial Officer, Derek Stovall-Leonard. He's listed on the website. There's a decision matrix in terms of like how they decide who they're able to support through fiscal sponsorships. I wanted to bring Lois into the discussion, who's been really patiently waiting for our audience questions. Because I know now, Lois, you are, is it a year into your role?
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. So from your perspective, how is it going? What's working well with these organizations that you're supporting?
Actually, I think everything's going great. I think giving organizations the opportunity to, one, have someone that they can talk to and have all these questions and go back and forth with day in and day out, that resource has been very valuable to them. And it's been valuable to us to understand how people are at the ideation stage or the startup stage, how they're thinking through their business, so we can make sure that they can not only be successful, but feel confident in what they're doing. As one of the examples that Jill gave in regards to fiscal sponsorship, I mean, we've had several questions and several meetings going back and forth for them to fully understand what that is and to get everything just the way that they wanted it, so they could be comfortable with what they were offering to their clients as far as their fundraising. And now they're realizing, okay, well, we can do our fundraising campaigns at this time of the year now that we have a fiscal sponsor, and we can have a fiscal sponsor who wants to give quarterly, and we don't have to worry about how we're going to handle that or how we're going to deal with that. So just the best part is just having someone who you can talk through all of that and not have those fears, and we can answer all of those questions.
Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to share some general information about the Mission Sustainability Initiative, and then I want to give Jill, Khaled, and Dee Dee an opportunity for any closing thoughts or last pieces of advice for our audience. So I'm going to just do a very brief slide presentation. So, as I mentioned, I lead the Mission Sustainability Initiative at Forefront, which is focused on long-term and permanent partnerships. We try to offer a holistic approach, which includes education, like this webinar, a lot of resources that you can find on our website, and also some grants that are available to help with one-time costs. We really want to build a community of leaders who can talk about partnerships and what they offer, because as I said in the beginning, so it doesn't feel so alone as you're thinking about what your options are. And we really believe that partnerships can really, if focused on mission, can increase impact, can overcome challenges, but also address equity. Impact, we've talked about potential impact for organizations and also some of the challenges when you're trying to either provide things like benefits or do IT if you're not partnering. On the equity front, I know that's a word that a lot of people are using right now. I wanted to say just a little bit about what that means and doesn't mean, right? So what that doesn't mean is we're at the MSI, we're not looking at partnerships as a way for small, often BIPOC-led organizations to be subsumed by white downtown organizations. That's not what we mean. But what it can mean, and if I can lift up as an example, the YWCA of Metropolitan Chicago recently joined with the YWCA of Lake County. And one of the big benefits, I think, of that was the YWCA Lake County was offering great programs, but all their staff were without benefits, right? And that's not equitable at all. And so oftentimes partnerships can allow organizations to adequately pay and provide benefits to their own employees, which is a part of really providing for the community. We've talked a lot about back office and fiscal sponsorships. This map created by La Piana, which is a national consulting firm, gives the range of partnerships that are out there. I really encourage people, these slides will be sent afterwards. This link actually takes you to a 9-page document that gives some examples of almost all of these partnerships. And you can see the closer end ones are mergers, which we haven't talked about today, but we really talked about kind of this blue ring, fiscal sponsorships, administrative consolidations, joint programming, and then the outer ring, the green, which are looser connections like networks or joint advocacy. This is just another listing of those partnerships. The MSI offers 4 things. So confidential advice, any nonprofit can call me to set up a call to talk about what they're thinking about in terms of a partnership. And I'll point you in the direction of some of the resources that we have, maybe some of the other upcoming educational events. I might also refer you to some other experts. There are paid consultants available to help 2 or more nonprofits negotiate partnerships. There's also pro bono legal or free legal advice to help form partnership agreements. And then we have grants for one-time out-of-pocket costs. This is just some information on some of the technical assistant calls that I've gotten earlier this year. Range of organizations, arts, social services, education, even one focused on journalism, looking at also a range of partnerships. And when you talk to me, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have anything figured out actually to set up a call. And it doesn't have to be a one-off. It can be the first in a series of calls. And a third of the organizations that I talked to earlier this year had yet to identify a potential partner. This is just a quote from one of our recent technical assistance providers. And just want to note that we have another educational event coming up November 1st about, are you ready to partner and finding a match? That will be listed on the Forefront website under events, and we'll send out the link to folks as well. This is just some of the resources that I mentioned, including our qualified consultants list and the link to the free legal support. I was happy to provide space for National Able and for the Y to talk about what they offer on our website for the Mission Sustainable Initiative. We also list some other providers of back office services, including the Back Office Cooperative, Keystone Alliance, Community Service Support, and Converge. Keystone and Community Service Partners focuses mostly on organizations serving the development of the disabled. Converge offers financial support, and please note, Converge is a subsidiary of Forefront. Just more on potential impact from some recent folks who've explored partnerships. They saw positive impacts on board engagement, on internal clarity and strategic direction, and the ability to think strategically. Again, these slides will be sent to you. Just another quote. I want to talk about COVID and how that's impacting the world of partnerships, because it's impacting us all, right? Just the world right now is a lot, right? There's COVID, there's an economic crisis, there's a racial reckoning. What we're finding with partnerships is that it's taking longer to figure out partnerships. And sometimes partnership conversations are being paused. But for those who've been able to follow through with negotiations, they've found themselves to be in much stronger positions than when going it alone. But recognizing that it takes time and it takes energy, and that's staff time and staff energy that is not spent on programming when you're exploring partnerships, but the potential benefits can be huge. If you'd like to set up a call to talk about what you're thinking about in terms of partnership, you can reach out to me. My email and phone numbers are available. And again, these calls are confidential, and you can reach out regardless of where you are in the process. process. I'm going to stop sharing. Just checking to see if there are other questions. There was a question put in the chat. Is anyone a fiscal sponsor for-profit organizations that is completing a project and not necessarily need your support services? What are the parameters or requirements before funds are distributed? And Lois, that you've posted that response. Do you want to share anything more in terms of the response?
And Jill, you can also jump in. But in regards to our fiscal sponsorships, and yes, we do provide for-profit fiscal sponsorships. We have a agreement that we sit down after we discuss what your needs are, how you want your acknowledgement letter, the website, the links, all of that. Then we come up with the contract that we will have together, and then we discuss that process as far as how you want the funds to be dispersed, any reporting that you would like to have, how often you want, how you will bill us for those fees once we receive them, and what the process is for your donors to submit their donations.
And most importantly, what the project is that is being supported, even though it's a for-profit company, like in the example that I gave earlier of the company that provides college athletic eligibility counseling for 8th grade and above, to make sure that as you're getting ready, if you have the expectation to play sports in college, that you know what all the rules are and all the steps you need to take to get up to that level. In that situation, the company wants to be able to provide that service to folks that wouldn't otherwise be able to pay for their services, coming from underprivileged backgrounds or neighborhoods that different sports teams that wouldn't otherwise have that as a resource. And so, that's where we're working with them as a fiscal sponsor to help fundraise to provide that same sort of support to additional individuals.
So several questions have been posted in the chat. I'm going to take them not quite in order, but one was specifically to the YWCA and whether you outline on your website what it means for you to be a fiscal sponsorship, and do you have or do you have something that can be emailed to folks?
We can definitely be in touch with that. We don't have something on the website currently with that information, but we can definitely reach out with that information.
And I should have asked this up front, Jill and Lois, I assume you're comfortable with my providing your contact information to all the audience members afterwards. So we'll do that. And then a question, I think this is more for you, Dee Dee. Somebody was asked about the Peace Development Fund, if you could speak more to their suitability as a fiscal sponsor. And I know it was somebody that you had looked at, but it's not somebody that you currently use as a fiscal sponsor.
Yeah, we had not currently used them, but I did recommend them to another peer who ended up using them. So I think similar to other fiscal sponsors, often there's, a contact person setting up a meeting. I think Peace Development Fund also they do have a document that kind of shares a bit about what type of services they offer within that. And so, yeah, it kind of just depends on what your needs are, right? And then thinking through if that fiscal sponsor provides the services that you'll need as a group. And so I think from my memory, it's that I don't actually think they give you their 501c3 number. I think it's more so taking grants and dispersing it on your behalf. And same thing as they give you a donation link. So all your donations are processed through them, and maybe a little bit more.
And Dee Dee, what were some of the other questions that you all asked when you were exploring fiscal sponsors? I assume besides some of the stuff we talked about is sort of like cost, and you're looking at values alignment, were the questions around like, how long would it take you to get money if they came to you, or other practical concerns?
Yes, I think that was also definitely a concern for us, especially, we do pop-ups. We are, trying to buy, equipment. So there were questions that came up around asking fiscal sponsors their process for dispersing funds. Is it, weekly? Is it monthly? What that process is like. That also contributed to, thinking about some over others, because, we are really small, and having access to the money that we fundraised at a quicker time was something that we were looking for. But, I think there is a process time for each of them. I also think in terms of other partnerships, we're pretty unique in the sense that, our, not every fiscal sponsor or even partner or person or organization may want to partner with us because of, we have ice cream colors that are Fudge the Police and Appalachia Ice. And so we are very political, and finding a fiscal sponsor that, is all right with having our mission on their webpage, right? Because I think that is also something that some fiscal sponsors offer. They're going to promote you on their website, even though they're not maybe actively fundraising on behalf of you, you are a part of their network and their community. And so having that sort of visibility is also helpful too. And I think with Allied Media, that was going to be a huge plus, because there's a ton of other like-minded organizations, racial justice organizations that are fiscally sponsored by them. And we thought, just being in that community would be really beneficial for an organization like us. But they weren't currently taking fiscal sponsored projects at that time.
Oh, one other final series of questions got posted in the chat that I want to pose to the panelists. One was, do you offer fiscal sponsorships outside of Illinois? And I know that for National Able, that answer is yes. What about YWCA?
We do currently have at least one I know of outside of Illinois, but the majority are in the Chicago area.
Sorry, Hala, you were about to.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. Probably we have the one outside of Illinois as well, a majority in the Chicago and suburbs,
And then there was a question of what type of information would you be looking for somebody who would do an initial inquiry about fiscal sponsorship in terms of the program proposal, and are there documents that would be needed? Is that that may not be a simple answer, I think it would be helpful to know, like, is there a baseline of documents that people should have before they talk to you, or can they start a conversation and is it more iterative?
It definitely varies, because some of the organizations or some of the groups that we work with really don't have documents. But important to the fiscal sponsorship arrangement is knowing who is being held responsible on the other end. So, who is going to be signing the agreement, and if things go wrong, who is that person? How do we have all the right information to know who to sort of go after? But then also to really know, have documentation on what it is that you're looking for as a program that will be supported by the fiscal sponsorship. And that could be a variety of things to support that. I'm not thinking of anything in particular that kind of fits across all of the fiscal sponsorships that we've done so far. But a lot of it just starts with a conversation, because it might not even be a fiscal sponsorship that someone is, that would be the best solution for someone. It could be somehow either partnering with a program that we already have, or partnering with another organization that we're connected with. So it's a non-answer, I apologize. But it just varies in the circumstance.
Howard?
Yeah, it's the same way with us as well, because especially for the financial side, for the fiscal sponsorship, is not the area. Normally we get contacted by the funder that, okay, this company is a startup, we'll give them the money, and would you provide the services and be a holder of the funds until they get the 501c3 and distribute on behalf and what have you kind of thing. So for the documentation, again, it depends on the size of the company. Is it just a startup and nothing else? Is to start with the conversation, and as Jill said, probably who will be responsible, what the side will be signing, and all that stuff. And if the bigger companies, those have the audits and some financials, then we'll start with the financials review about how they are managing their books, and then what services we would have to provide and what areas we have to just to start and dig in as we start to making sure that they are getting the values as we work with them and all that stuff. So, but it's just depends on the nature of the relationship with that company and size of the company as well.
And then one final question for the audience, and then I want to give time for all of you for any closing thoughts if you'd like. But someone asked, could you discuss financial assistance and fundraising for startups at the very early stage under a fiscal sponsorship arrangement? For instance, for those that are still at the idea stage. Yeah, I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. There are ways I might be interpreting the question, but I would love, could you discuss financial assistance and fundraising for startups at the very early stage under a fiscal sponsorship? And that's open to all of you.
Most recently, we've been helping some folks really think about what their goal is with their fundraising and having them talk with our strategic engagement team to kind of think through some fundraising strategies. We don't provide direct financial assistance for fundraising activities, but we'll, like I said, partner with different groups to be the fiscal sponsor and support them in that way. And in that sense, we set up a web page where there's, they can customize the content for their fundraising opportunity, and then assist them with the sort of the language that we were talking about earlier and how to explain the fiscal sponsorship arrangement, and assist them in that way.
Paul, I don't know if there's anything you want to add, or Dee Dee, you had actually spoken about how before you all had a fiscal sponsor, your 501c3, you did some crowd fundraising, right? I think you did a GoFundMe, is that right?
Yeah, we did a GoFundMe, crowdfunding, and I have experience in doing some crowdfunding in a variety of different projects. So I think, yeah, definitely with like new idea, like startup stage, crowdfunding is a helpful tool because, it's definitely a way to get people excited about an idea, grow your base, utilize social media. If you have a product or something, kind of like us, introduce people to a product, just really kind of create community around your organization or your mission or this idea. A lot of times I've seen that initial crowdfunding, like those are your like first time initial donors, like those are, friends and family fundraising type situation. And so, there's also sometimes startup grants out there. And, I think those are kind of just dependent on the type of startup that you have. So I can't necessarily recommend any because I'm not entirely sure which type of work that you do, but doing some, prospecting around that but early stage ideas or new project. I think what's great about being a fiscal sponsor, having an early idea and still having a fiscal sponsorship means that you're like a new product, or not product, but a project with an already established, organization that kind of has that backing. So you may not be like as risky for some folks to give money to because you're not processing the money and someone else is going to be, auditing it and things like that. So obviously communicating that you can do the work and you have the right team to do it. But, having that extra support system can also be really helpful in seeking out some startup grants. So, and also allows you to have access to them where if you have no status at all, if you're not a 501c3 and don't have a fiscal sponsor, having grants is just not an option.
All right. So I just posted 2 things in the chat, and we'll send these afterwards as well. One is an article about fiscal sponsorship, 6 ways to do it right, and one's about fiscal sponsorship, 6 ways to do it wrong. Well, contrast. In our last 2 minutes, would each of you like to give like 30 seconds of final thoughts? Khalid.
Well, I think probably definitely this forum was very helpful, not only for our perspective to present to the audience as well. And I think probably would help audience to understanding what kind of ways they could get help. You know, the fiscal sponsorship or the contractual areas for IT or finance and what have you kind of thing. So that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My apologies on behalf of everyone at Forefront for the technical difficulties that we face that abruptly cut off the webinar. I wanted to actually allow an opportunity for the panelists to say some closing remarks, but in their stead, I want to actually just offer my gratitude to all of them, to the YWCA, to National Able, to Justice Cream, and Radical Monarchs, but to individually Jill, Khalid, Lois, Bridget, and Dee Dee for taking the time out today to share their wisdom with all of us. My special thanks to Emily for helping get us all set up and back to recording again. We'll be following up with a survey for your feedback with the slides that I shared and with the links that we put in the chat. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or any of the panelists. We'll be sharing contact information as well. But we really appreciate your taking the time to join us today. And as I said, look for information on the MSI event on Are You Ready to Partner and Finding a Match that will be on November 1st, Monday, November 1st in the afternoon. And that will show up on the Forefront events calendar shortly. But thanks so much and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.